and we'll get the meeting going here. Okay, I'd like to call the special council meeting for Tuesday, January 9th to order. We would like to acknowledge with respect that we are the city of Colwood lies within the traditional territories of the Lekwungen speaking people, represented by the Kasepsum and Songhees nations, who have stewarded these lands since time immemorial. And if I can get mover and seconder to adopt today's agenda as presented, Councillor Grove, Councillor Olson. Any discussion? Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carried. And public participation. I don't think there's no one online. I don't see anyone. So we'll move on to new business. The 2024 to 2028 draft capital plan. Jenn Hepting. Are you starting it off, Jenn, or is Robert?
Thank you, Mayor Kobayashi. I will start us off tonight.
Okay.
And just before we get into it, I'll remind council and our team of where we are in terms of our progress with the 2024 budget deliberations. We have completed service review. We have received direction from council, and that has been integrated into the draft financial plan. We have published excerpts of the financial plan. So we're scheduled this week to review both our capital plan and the project budgets, the initiative budgets that support that, as well as our special initiative review. We're then scheduled to be back in chambers next week where we will return to the operating budget overview. We'll remind ourselves of what some of the changes were that came out of service review. And we'll also review the financial plan highlights in their entirety. I anticipate that what we have published for the agenda content, we will be able to get through with this week's meetings. Tonight, I will start with a brief overview of the city's reserves. Those do fund both the capital budgets that you will hear from our teams on tonight, as well as our special initiatives. So it is helpful to understand where we are at with our reserve balances. And we'll then get into a review of each of our capital budgets. We have about 85 or so to get through. At any time, please raise your hand or indicate if you have questions. We will pause. Other than that, we will just continue to plow through the overview. This council endorsed our budget approach late last year. A reminder of the principles that our teams follow when we compile these budgets. You have heard from us and we have presented on our operating budgets, both for existing and new services. Tonight's focus will be on our capital program. That is the city's 5-year capital plan. Thursday evening, we will get into our special initiatives and those budgets and plans that we have for the next 5 years. In terms of both the capital and the special, those are primarily funded through our reserve balances, grants, where we have been successful. Where they are contingent on grants, we will highlight that contingency, as well as debt financing. We have published with tonight's package an update to our debt management plan for the 24 through 28 financial plan. And we'll get into the specifics and the implications on the city's tax increase next week with respect to the update there. But we are proposing and we are underway to obtain new debt for some road infrastructure works, as well as that is the proposed funding for both our RCMP detachment facility as well as the Public Works operations facility. So we'll get into the specifics of the implications of debt financing next week. Published tonight as well, included in the capital plan excerpt, is the operating impact associated with the newly proposed capital budgets that are before you. The team has also worked, I'll preface this by saying there are a number of master plans that drive these budgets that are before you and what we have compiled within this updated financial plan. including our draft strategic plan. And so with each presentation, you will see a reference to the related pathways of the draft strategic plan. It's our intention that this will help provide clarity and just some context on why these works or this spend is being proposed. And I would like to say with most of the presentation tonight, the presentation is quite clear. This slide is not. We definitely endeavor to move away from getting spreadsheets before you. But I did want to start by highlighting where we currently are with our reserves. So we recently presented our third quarter projections for 2023 that did project that we would have reserve balances of approximately $36 million at the end of last year. These budgets that are before you, they are utilizing these reserve balances. Next week, when we get into the implications on our tax increase, we will talk a little bit about our revenue sources and what is driving. We are anticipating a little over $12 million to be transferred into our reserves. As you know, we do propose an annual tax increase to support that transfer. And so in order for us to achieve that $12.5 million into reserves, this draft financial plan does propose a 1.65% tax increase. And so I'll preface tonight's presentation with, we are proposing a 1.65% tax increase to support these transfers to reserves. And in addition, we're proposing a 3.24% tax increase for city service delivery. So this draft financial plan with those two primary drivers, we're at a 4.9% tax increase, consistent with what this council heard from us during service review late last fall. So just to keep that in the back of your mind. With each project budget, initiative budget that we get before you, we will highlight what the funding source is of those works. We've also published.
Sorry, Jen, I'm gonna ask you a question here.
Yes.
So I think one of the key points here is your sustainable stars. I think that's something that has to be pointed out. I was surprised that you don't consider the gas tax as sustainable. Yes, no, maybe so.
Great question. In terms of it being a recurring funding source, we do have reason to believe that that funding will continue. I don't know if I would say into perpetuity, but we do have reason to believe it will certainly continue beyond the 24 kind of previously defined program finish. We've already been informed of that. Our reference with that star for sustainable is with respect to our sustainable infrastructure replacement plan. We consider a number of reserves as funding that replacement plan, and that legend in that star there is to indicate that that there's more than just the sustainable infrastructure general reserve that we do rely on to fund the replacement of our existing infrastructure.
And last question, and it's the very first item actually, because the rest of them are very self-explanatory. That surplus general operating. So that is just an accumulation over the years of just the general operating, our operating budget, correct?
That is correct. And I will state that within that $10 million is the $6.6 million growing community. We will be back before council, and that will stand alone, independent of surplus. Other than that,
that was my other question. Thank you, because I went, no, there's something wrong with that number.
That is the accumulation. And as I've mentioned before, we do rely on that accumulation as a funding source. So with this draft financial plan, that surplus is funding a number of initiatives. Biggest spend there is related to the Galloping Goose overpass infrastructure and our matching contribution to that grant that is funding those works.
Okay, thank you very much for clarifying. Please proceed.
And so we have published an initial draft of the 5-year projections of the reserves. On initial glance, you know, over the next 5 years, these reserves are projected to more than double. there's a couple of drivers to consider with respect to how our reserve balances change. One is the funding for our annual transfers. More than half of our annual transfer into the reserves is funded through, excuse me, development. And so it's absolutely conditional on the timing of development, as well with recent changes with provincial legislation. We anticipate that future projections for those reserves may absolutely fluctuate beyond what we have initially anticipated with this draft plan. As well as we get into our capital plan tonight, you will see year one, year two, fairly well defined, driven by a number of, existing design works, existing works that are well underway. Years 3 to 5 are certainly kind of to be determined in terms of some of the updates that are pending with respect to master plans. So in particular, when we review our road infrastructure 5-year capital plan, you'll see that kind of beyond year 2, that the works that are proposed really are dependent on our transportation master plan update, and then we will return. So I don't want, these draft balances as we get into year 5, where we're anticipating upwards of $80 million in our reserves. That's absolutely helpful because we will be refining these capital budgets in the coming months and year, and we will require those funding sources. So just something to keep in mind. And so with that, we'll delve into our capital plan review. And we'll start with the city's road infrastructure program. So over the next 5 years, right now, we have about $22 million proposed to be spent to support. And this is primarily previously approved road infrastructure works. And so we'll start with the sidewalk and bike lane program. So right now, the defined spend for this program really is derived from the active transportation initiatives that were endorsed previously. I believe it was 2 or 3 years ago. You last heard a comprehensive update from the team at the active transportation meeting in Q4 of 23. And then the design works were endorsed by council late last year as well. With that endorsement, there was the deferral of the Fulton Road sidewalk works. And so we do have the engineering team here tonight, should you have any questions. Design engineering services are well underway. The 90% designs have driven the capital cost estimates that are integrated into this financial plan. These works, as we previously mentioned, will be financed through debt financing, and those loan authorization borrowing bylaws are imminent and will be back before this council shortly. Do we have any questions on the proposed works for the sidewalk and bike lane program?
Yes, it actually goes. If I do have one question. So I know we made the decision to defer Fulton Road, but yeah, it's not shown anywhere now. Like it almost looks like it's eliminated now. So defer and eliminate are 2 different words here. So it's disappeared from the books here. So I have a question about that. Are we re-looking at rescoping and then?
Yes, excuse me, it is deferred. We know it's deferred. Our problem is we haven't figured out the new scope, what that project will look like. And when we put something in front of you, we like to put a number that we can actually justify with regards to a construction cost. So we'll work on that construction cost. We'll bring that back either as an amendment moving forward, or you'll see it sometime in 2025 budget deliberations, but it'll show up back up in the 5-year plan sometime in the next.
Thanks so much. Great explanation. Thank you. Councillor Jensen.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. There was extensive discussion about Fulton Road with the Active Transportation Committee, and the scope was changing dramatically, which was going to require much more significant costings to do with some creek abutments and what have you. And it was felt from the committee that our attention was best spent our money's were best spent on several of the other projects that are on the books already and ready to go. So delayed, maybe, and I think it became clear too that some of the other areas in the community that are up for sidewalks are much more robustly used by community members than that stretch of Fulton Road.
Okay, super, thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you, Your Worship. So what we're gonna do tonight is we've got about only 20 of the 80. We try to go big and not plentiful. So we'll go through the projects. We'll give you a little simple breakdown with regards to each one, what the item is. And if you'd like to get more detail, I've brought the various team members that are responsible for the works, and we can hopefully answer any question you have for us moving forward. So with that, we'll start with Tyler.
Thank you. So this item here is regards to the Kelly Road sidewalk project. Kelly Road is realization of the active transportation cross sections. So that would be an additional sidewalk, bike lane, and curb barrier on Kelly Road, approximately 200 linear meters. If we don't have any other questions on this one, I can move. So Hagel Road, again, realization of these active transportation sidewalk projects. Hagel's an interesting one where there's a few trees that we've had to make some sacrifices in our cross section, whether it's narrowing or bringing it slightly away from the property line. So one example is rounding the corner at Hagel Road, where instead of a buffer bike lane and perhaps trimming into the roots of the tree and perhaps losing it, we're going to be putting up the posts instead. So that's just an example of some design challenges where we've taken feedback from council from previous meetings and trying to make best of all the competing priorities. Yeah.
Councilor
Sorry.
Warren?
Yeah, quick question. And I know we've looked at some of the drawings in the past, but can you refresh me just on the bike lane component, what the form factor is? Like how is that being built out? These aren't just painted bike lanes, right? They're protected bike lanes, or are they painted? I'm not certain.
Yeah, we're doing our best to realize the painted bike lane with buffer with curb protection where we can. And on this project, yeah, so, I don't believe actually the protected part is on this stretch of Hagel. We do have it on Kelly.
So this would be like the Kelly Road example, like that would be kind of similar in design to what we're piloting on Painter, or more continuous, I guess. I'm just curious how it would look.
Thank you, Councilor Ward. Yeah, the goal with each project will be road specific. So much like the active transportation. So Hagel Road's traffic volumes are down significantly, like it's running 1,300 vehicles. So under the active transportation piece, it wouldn't require protection. It would be on the cusp of buffering. So in that particular case, it lends itself to buffering as opposed to protection. So it's buffered in areas, and where we're constrained with regards to the cross section, it might go down just to a painted lane. But I believe, and Tyler, you may know this better than me, but I think the entire section is buffered actually for that piece, but I don't think there's any protection in that area.
Yeah, I guess what I'm getting at is I'm just wondering, are we, as you said, maybe you said it, we're going street by street in our design, but do we have an overarching kind of concept per each definition, right? Like arterial, connector, have we got to that point where we would say that all arterials need to be, properly protected, and then, a connector is sort of partial like Painter, or, is that not the approach? I'm not saying one's right or wrong. I'm kind of curious if there is that overarching plan, or if, as you said, it's going to be sort of piecemeal.
It is that overarching plan with regards to, the Lagoon Road project, for instance, what we're taking in that, and Tyler will get into Lagoon Road, but Lagoon Road, it's a collector road. So we would look at protection. We would look at buffering. Its traffic volume is around the 4,000, 4,500 car piece. So then we say to ourselves, okay, we're getting close to protection, but now the piece that we're doing is downhill. So one of the things that we look at with regards to active transportation is speed differential with regards to cars and cyclists. So in that particular case, it's a 40K zone. Bikes going down that road are probably doing 30, 40Ks themselves. So it doesn't really require protection. So we would buffer that area and not protect it because the volumes weren't quite high enough to protect it. And the speed differential was low enough that we didn't need to put the cost into the protection. And plus the protection at those kind of bike speeds sometimes can get in the way of the cyclist. So in that particular case, it would be buffered. But when we move to a different project, we take a look at that lens. So for instance, Fulton, because it's going up the hill, we were thinking more on the protection side of things because of the speed differential. So each particular street will take the tenets embedded with regards to the TMP and the active transportation plan, and we'll use those tenets to decide what pieces we'll put into that project. And then we'll layer on that other piece, as Tyler said, with regards to competing priorities about trees, grades, retaining walls, and all those other things. So that's where we can deviate from what the ultimate plan would be if we had a clean slate. So we move accordingly by street.
I appreciate that. And I think that's it. I just, it's a common sense approach, I think, what you're taking. And it's defensible too, to say, like Kelly Road, for example, for me is an area where high volume, high traffic, protect the cyclists, right? And in other areas like Hagel, where it's low traffic, having just a clearly delineated bike lane, there's financial implications to this. You save money on the one, you spend it on the other. And I think the public would understand that. So thank you for that, because I think it's a very logical approach. Appreciate it.
Hey, Lagoon
Sorry,
Road.
Councillor Jensen.
Yeah, thank you. Just to echo or to reinforce, that particular project, Hagel, and taking a street by street approach. Everything you said, I can agree with. The only thing I would add that Hagel is a direct, safe route to school. It is defined as a. So I would hope that that has an impact on our decision making too. That particular stretch leads directly to an elementary school. So what it looks like may not be exactly what the neighboring street looks like, a couple blocks away.
Certainly the fact that the school's there definitely plays with regards to what we want to put in that specific area. That would be correct.
Thank you.
With regards to the differentiation of various roads.
We're ready to go.
Right. So Lagoon Road, this is the last of the projects planned for 2024. So this project is
Sidewalk projects, just to be clear, we have lots of other projects.
Thank you. Last sidewalk project planned for 2024. So this is a sidewalk bike lane and buffered bike lane. At the top of Lagoon, we have to realize a retaining wall. And that's just to push a pretty big grade difference between the private property and the road, and to realize what we can of the cross section. And that was all I had for sidewalk projects. If there's any other questions.
Just out of curiosity, John, who, for the protected lanes, who provides those cement blocks for us? The same guys that are doing our bridge over the Galloping?
That's correct, sure, Span.
Yeah, I thought so. Okay, thank you. Councillor Jordan.
Thank you. I just had a quick question at Lagoon Road. How far is that stretched? Like how far down Lagoon are we going with the
Length of project?
Okay.
580. I wrote it down just before walking in. Meters, sorry. So I think it's down to Aloha is where it ends.
Okay.
That's where you get into your existing sidewalk.
Okay, thank you.
This is probably a good time to just mention with regards to the retaining wall. We're anticipating that retaining wall will be higher than 1.2 meters. And we are exempt from the bylaw. But that being said, I think it's 2.5 meters, Tyler, something like that, maybe 3. It's still well within reason. It'll be engineered so it won't be just rock stacked on top of each other. I just thought I'd mention it to the council.
Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, so buffered protected bike lane. Talked a little bit about this already, but yeah, so this is our budget for next year, 116,000. This program started this year. and we started with a painter pilot project. So this pilot project was an initial project that we put out to get a feeler for what the community perspective was, and we ensured that we put it on Let's Talk Hallwood to get engagement from the community. We did have feedback from the community on this, which there was a lot of feedback on that we received. 68% strongly in favor. And as well, we've received a lot of positive feedback from the school and other identities such as ICBC. This budget will be for this year. We will be going to the Active Transportation Committee in February with the summary of the pilot program, the results of that. And as well, we're working with our GIS department to identify all of the buffered bike lanes in Colwood. And then we're going to put together a matrix based on active transportation priorities and other factors to identify which projects we'd like to do for 2024. And we'll bring that to the Active Transportation Committee for feedback for identifying projects for this year. Happy to answer any questions.
Seeing none, please proceed.
This is the LED upgrade program. So we've decided to defer this year's budget and next year's budget to 2026 to achieve some economies of scale. This is the conversion of some of the existing high pressure sodium lights to LED lights. And we've done, well, the previous project done in 2022 was the same thing where we moved a bunch of separate the yearly budget to 1 year to try to achieve just a greater effect and get more than just 3 lights done a year. So in 2022 it was 50. We hope in 2026 we can get 50 to 100, depending on what pricing we get back. Happy to answer your questions.
Seeing none, please proceed.
Thank you, Your Worship. Next up is our traffic signal controller upgrades. We have ordered the equipment. I've kind of referenced this in the past. We are looking to do a couple of pilot type projects, one of them being video, which will allow us to actually recognize traffic and in certain circumstances. And we are hoping to try this where we can take a speeding car, see it several hundred meters away, and then change the light to red so that we can slow down speeding within the corridor. We're seeing if that becomes effective, then that might be something that we'll use moving forward. But currently the program will have an upgrade at Souk and Kelly, Souk and Aldine, and Souk and Mountain View. So that should happen in 2024.
Councillor Jensen?
Sure. That's extremely interesting, John, and I think we should embrace new technologies wherever possible. The only trepidation I have is alignment with the Motor Vehicle Act and its regulations. Any feedback on that?
With regards to alignment with Motor Vehicle Act, we certainly have the ability to post our speed limits. And the ability to change that light. I'm not aware of anything that restricts us from altering speeds. It has been trialed in other areas. Victoria's doing it. I think Saanich is doing it.
Okay.
I can follow up with them to see if they've looked into that. But to my knowledge, our ability to change those lights through timing, through activation, through physical, I definitely know that there's technology out there now that used to be done through loops. So they would have a loop 300 meters out, the car passes it, and then 30 meters down the road, it passes that loop, and those 2 loops signify the speed, and then it changes the light. So we're using camera technology rather than physical loop technology. So I wouldn't anticipate there'd be any difference with regard to that
Thank you.
regulation.
And to be fair, I don't think we need a legal opinion. But,
Well, that's good because I wasn't planning on getting one.
Thank you.
This one's the roundabout at Latoria and VMP. As you know, it was opened for use at the end of last year. There's still a few things to be done on site just to clean up the project, which is what is included in the 2024 budget. One of those things is the hydro poles, which still need to come down. Unfortunately, the latest estimate from BC Hydro was late March for those to come down, unfortunately. So those will stay up until then. And that's why this budget exists, is that we need Skanska to come back and clean up everything that's left once BC Hydro comes by. But that's more or less what remains. And if you have any questions. Please proceed.
Next up is transit shelters. We've got a program with BC Transit with regards to shelters. We look at our onboarding stats throughout the community and then pick the areas that have the highest onboarding stats. So we do have 2 shelters that were actually supposed to be done in 2023, but BC Transit wasn't able to provide them. So the program has them provide the shelters, and we provide the infrastructure to allow the shelters to be installed. So we've got a pad sitting at Carindale and VMP that's ready to go, and we've got one at Ben Homer as well. So once those shelters show up, we're hoping in Q1 we'll install them, and then we'll work with BC Transit to set up the next set of transit shelters as needed.
Next one is the bridge repairs and upgrades. So in 2023, we hired Stantec to perform the 5-year inspection of our Esquimalt Lagoon Bridge. That's the diving work and survey work of the ocean bottom was done at the end of last year. So we should be getting that report in imminently. And that report will go on to identify maintenance upgrades for the bridge in the next 5-year program.
The Galloping Goose Bridge overpass is the exciting one for 2024. Luckily, we've now have Matt Lahini as the owner's representative in the administration of the design build contract. As you know, SureSpan's got the design build, and that is moving forward very well now. We've almost got the contract finalized for signature likely next week, and then it's full steam ahead for the design build process. The latest estimate from the contractor is to be completed by end of 24, early 2025, which is really good news. And we're very excited to get that going and completed as soon as we can.
I think that's it's encouraging when we saw that timing, and I think it's one of the reasons why council chose SureSpan as one of their projects is the expediency with regards to the construction of that project. And our grant will be well within our time limits with regards to that grant, which was at one point a concern with regards to the project.
Good evening, council. I'm going to give you an update on the Machosen-Latoria intersection. So most of this work was completed in 2023. We have a few outstanding deficiencies. You can see here that there's a budget for 2024 of just under $1 million. That is for the 4th leg of that intersection, which is actually part of the beachlands. So that work may start this year. We do have an active building permit in for the presentation center of beachlands. So that's a good sign that they're starting their works, that we're likely going to see that intersection at least furthered this year. We do have the money held right now is based on a conceptual design done when Royal Bay was doing that intersection. So we believe that the scope at that time was significantly larger. So we actually have less work to complete, but we do need to get that final design and the cost estimate that will come with it. So, but we think this number is sufficient. Center. Moving on to Latoria Boulevard, so the Machosen to Sparrowhawk section, again, primarily works are completed, not even primarily, substantially they're all done. A few deficiencies, mostly landscaping, a couple of broken concrete panels, things like that. You may notice here that there's quite a big cost discrepancy between budget and cost spent to date.
In a good way.
In a very good way. So I wish that our team member Aaron could be here. He's the one that managed the previous project and this one here. The team did an excellent job over the last few years. Again, the budget was based on a full realization of the cross section, and that would go from, again, Machosen to Sparrowhawk. When we got into the detailed design, we were able to actually utilize a lot of the infrastructure on the north side of the road, some of the sidewalks, some of the curb, some of the boulevards, and it represented a significant decrease in our cost to the project. So the delta there will go back into our DCC program and be able to fund future projects. So that's a huge win for Colwood.
Councillor Ward?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I'm going to say signal out, but no, single out the Sparrowhawk flashers as well. I know relatively minor in the grand scheme of things, but from a community perspective, I can't think of a project that's been, gone from, public concern to completion in such a rapid way. And with a lot of fanfare. I mean, at the end of the day, you're not going to get the recognition maybe you deserve for it. No one's going to line up with gifts and cake and muffins. But I do, talking to people in the community, particularly, I've gone down and talked to some folks that were coming back and forth from the daycare, and there's a lot of young families in the community that I think are really appreciative of that initiative. It was relatively small in the grand scheme of things, but the impact wasn't. So thank you for that. I think it's very much appreciated.
Yeah, we have received actually a fair amount of positive feedback. I know our front end staff certainly received a lot of negative feedback along that way. But once we started moving and council supporting that project went a long ways, and that allowed us to be expedient. So, I mean, that was truly a team effort within the city, and council reacting quickly and allowing us to be expedient really made it successful. And we have seen some, you're right, we don't get gifts, but when they don't have pitchforks and they're saying thanks, that's all we need. So next up is the intersection of Whale Road and Wilford Road. We've talked about this project. This is a developer-driven project. It will be done in conjunction with the Goose improvements as well. This project did go in front of the Active Transportation Plan or Active Transportation Committee. They've seen the work, and it's majority funded through the developer, and we do have a grant in place to help with the city side of the funding. We're hoping we'll be successful with that. Next up is the intersection for VMP and Carindale. This currently is really a place marker, and it represents a signalization of that area. And as we've been discussing with council with regards to the traffic model, once we start figuring out our corridors, then we'll go in and specifically look at our intersections. And this is one of those intersections. So depending on where we land, if we land with a controlled intersection, and this funding should be in the neighborhood of what we need. But if we end up determining that it's a roundabout, then obviously we'll need some significant dollars on top of this. So we'll get back to council with regards to the actual build here, but we thought we should keep the place marker in there for now. So this is deferred at this time. It's not likely it'll be constructed in 2024 by the time we're done the TMP and the other traffic model work, but we should have a path moving forward sometime in 2024.
Does the ICBC still supply credits or money for roundabouts? That they were doing that for the longest time. So
yes, that program's still in place, and we actually have been very successful with ICBC. Just recently, we got some grant funding just for some of our speed boards. So they've actively engaged with us. Peggy's been a great partner. I would anticipate if we build a roundabout there, we would see some funding from ICBC for that work for sure.
do you know the magnitude that they would do for those?
It sounds more exciting than it is. It likely would be in anywhere $50,000 to $100,000 at the most. It's provincial money, and if we got that money for that project, we probably wouldn't see it for other projects. So we kind of get our slice every year, and it's just a matter of how they give it to us.
Thanks so much, John.
So this project is interesting. It stems from a previous agreement with the developer of 594 Latoria. We projected their frontage works will probably go ahead in 2024, and that agreement we had previously made was in exchange for an SRW and some land in order to realize the roundabout. At the council at the time decided to wait for the developer to do those frontage improvements before the city comes in to realize the frontage improvements that we would do as part of that agreement. So that's where that budget is expected, and we will be working with the developer to realize that work.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, and then the left-hand turn lane improvements at Allendale and VMP. As previously discussed, this stems from an oversight during the design of the left turn lanes. So although it is budgeted in our 2024 budget, we don't expect to actually have to pay any of that, as we're in discussions with the consultant and their insurance, which is why this hasn't happened yet. It's still going through their insurance providers, and we're very close to getting that final letter from them to be assured before we move forward with any construction. So that's where that's sitting.
Thank you very much. I just want to make a comment right now. Not a question here, Jen, but the way that you guys presented this year, I mean, the layout of this is just absolutely phenomenal. You know, anyone could pick this up and understand it's that good. It's really good. And, you know, I guess the only thing that would be kind of neat, but I mean, you summarize it and I trust your numbers are going to all add up, right? You know, because I like how you do the funding source too. That's so important to me. It might have been, you know, just for the year, for the 2024, to have the list of all the projects and then, you know, the funding sources at the top, and then it all add up, and then you can reconcile it to your totals. That would have been kind of neat feedback too.
Thank you very much for that feedback. The layout of this is primarily driven by our talented communications team. There is, I mean, our financial plan document is quite comprehensive, 150, 200 pages. We've published an excerpt of that. It does include some of that information that you're referencing. So we do have a reconciliation of funding by type for the capital program in that document, which is a separate attachment to this agenda. And I agree with each specific asset class of the capital program. We could even further refine that information so that for example, we're now going to move into facilities. And so we could have summaries so that you can see the proposed funding source for this specific aspect of the capital plan. We do currently have it for the capital overview in its entirety, but we really appreciate any of this feedback. Every year we endeavor to refine the presentation materials because this is quite comprehensive.
That's very minor. I just want to make sure I point that out as a minor point.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
So that concludes the overview of the city's road infrastructure capital plan. We'll now move into our facility infrastructure. So city facilities maintained by our public works team, as well public works team and our building team support the facility infrastructure. The 5-year plan is approximately $31 million. It's primarily driven by 2 facilities. Our CMP detachment expansion that we are quite well familiar with, as well as the Public Works Operations Facility. So with that, we will get started on our presentation. We continue to have funds set aside for both the exterior and the interior retrofit of the City Hall facility. Perhaps I'll turn it to the team to just kind of highlight what we have done recently and what we plan to do.
Good evening again, council. Show a little bit more purpose. So yeah, 2024, that's the bigger ticket. We've got roof replacement in there, soft replacement or repairs rather, and then HVAC repair and replacement. And then is this?
Perhaps I'll jump in as well. Interior retrofit works on the facility have been underway for a couple of years now. We do have nominal funding, approximately $20,000 that is set aside in the 2024 financial plan. That includes one-time funding that's proposed for an art display system here in the foyer of City Hall, as well as a replacement plan to support the furniture within the City Hall facility. So in recent years, that has been supported through renovation budgets as we've created additional workspace, created meeting space. And so moving into 24, we're ensuring that we have some of that funding available. Moving on, we have had previously approved budget to support the fire hall facility, specifically with respect to the radio antenna mast. That work was deferred in 23, and we are awaiting quotes for work. And we anticipate that we will get that previously approved budget complete in early 2024. St. John's Church facility improvements. I'll turn it over to JR.
Good evening, council. Through the chair. So last year we had a budget to begin interior renovations at Emery Hall and St. John's. Realizing that in order to do the full renovation, it was a bit more involved to make sure that the washrooms could meet accessible code. So we've come back this year to get a little bit more money to make sure that the project meets the full scope of the original intention. So what you see here is a little bit of carry forward from last year's works, and then some new funding requested to build out that full capability. And then also you'll see the Public Works Operations Facility. So in 2024, we have a budget set aside for beginning the design process for this facility. We're looking at that through the year and establishing the scope and moving forward with that. Essentially, that will be continuing those initial priorities, which are to offset some of the aging facilities on the site and ensure a sustainable future for city staff and city functions as well. And also looking at potential integration of a post-disaster EOC, something that would be a first for Colwood. So that would be something that would be a key consideration to this project.
Thank you for renaming the project, JR.
I had mentioned earlier this evening with respect to the financial implications of the debt financing that is proposed within the 5-year financial plan. The primary implication for Colwood's tax increases will be related to this facility. The financial plan does propose that we will be funding both the feasibility, which has previously occurred and has got us to where we are today, and the design through existing surplus balances. We will be proceeding on the debt financing, which is subject to public approval inside of 2024. And the implications of servicing that debt are integrated into the financial plan. There's detail in the excerpt that has been published tonight. And we will talk a little bit next week about the impact on our tax lift inside of the year 2 and year 3 of this draft financial plan. We just commented on, there's 2 related budgets for the facility improvements that are underway for St. John's Church. And moving on to the Goldfinch facility improvements.
Yeah, so for this building here, what we're looking into is two accessible washrooms that could be used as public washrooms and accessible from the outside, but also being able to be accessed from that building itself, which would increase the potential occupant load for the use of that building. So the idea that, yeah, flexible washroom, some of the cost that jumps out of it is a sprinklered building. So that adds a cost as well. Yeah, all I can think of with that.
Councilor Grove, thank you. Do you have that occupant load that you're looking to acquire? Do you have that there somewhere?
Yeah, so with that upgrade, that would give you an occupant load of 100.
100.
Yeah.
Great.
Which I don't think you could fit that many people in the building. So we'd also have to look at that's for washroom use, but we'd also have to look at egress for fire and everything as well.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Good.
Previous financial plans did include placeholder budgets to support the roof repair for the city's fire hall facility. We currently don't have an estimate integrated into this financial plan. We are developing a plan where we anticipate the consolidation of a number of facility improvements for the fire hall, and we will be returning with that either financial plan amendment or during 25 budget deliberations. And that concludes our presentation of the facility 5-year plan, and we'll now move into drainage. Drainage capital infrastructure plan is primarily driven by our stormwater master plan. Later this week, you will hear from the team about the spend related to the update to the stormwater master plan, which will inform future iterations of this capital spend, because we certainly do anticipate in the future we will be spending more than we currently have outlined here before you. But I will turn it over to the engineering team to comment on what we do have within the plan.
Yeah, so currently we have first item here is a contingency for major repairs. So 2 years ago, we started a CCTV program to do video inspections of all of our stormwater and sewer pipes in Colwood. So as part of that program, not often, but there are times where, thankfully not often, there are times where a pipe is identified as either in desperate need of a repair or that it's failed. An example of this is on Stornoway. I believe this was 2 years ago. As part of our program, we identified a corrugated steel pipe that the bottom of it was rusted and that it had completely failed. So we needed the funding to get to that project and get that pipe replaced as soon as possible. So now as part of a proactive approach, we have a budget item identified if this comes up as part of our ongoing program.
Just wanted to give a quick shout out to Public Works on this program. The video program has been a great success. Tanner and his team are taking care of not only the storm sewer, but as part of that also the sanitary sewer system. It really helps us inform our master plans, and it helps confirm those high level documents that we really aren't seeing microscopically. It's more of a macroscopic look. But by having the CTV program that council's endorsed, that really helps us confirm what's going on with regards to those pipes. So it gives us a nice insurance piece with regards to we're heading in the right direction and seeing the work that we're doing is making sense from that direction. So Tanner's team's really helping us out with that. So it helps inform this capital program moving forward. So it's been really great success.
Just out of interest, are you finding like everything has a sort of a designated life when it comes to pipes, right? Everything does. And are we finding that this is being confirmed with the video cam? So there's no surprises so far?
I definitely say there are some surprises. I think what it's doing for us is that we currently have pipes right now, specifically the PVC pipes. Their lifespan is projected for 100 years.
100 years.
And I really think 100 years is super conservative. I think, when we start talking about plastic bags and landfills that are going to last 100 years, I think these PVC pipes are going to last significantly longer. Where I have concerns, maybe more on the sewer side than the storm side, is the rubber gasket piece and whether it lasts more than 100 years. So when it comes to storm pipes, it's okay if those gaskets fail and we get some leakage in those pipes, and we maybe worry about undermining of bedding and those types of things that might cause us some structural integrity problems. But with regards to the system itself, we're okay. On the sanitary side, obviously, if those gaskets start going, that also causes a problem with regards to leakage of sewer and contamination. So we'll want to stay on top of that. So that's where that program is really helpful. But I think overall, I think what we're seeing with regards to the lifespan of our metal pipes and those kinds of things for the most part would be what we anticipate. You get into some hot soils where maybe they degrade sooner rather than later. In those cases, that's where you might see a surprise. But I think overall, what we're seeing is what we'd expect to see.
Thanks for the education.
So the next project on here is the Cecil Blog reroute. So initially Fulton Stormwater Project was the first project identified, which was a project that was on the list in the master plan, and that was brought forward because of the sidewalks. We've done some rearranging to now have the Cecil Blog reroute project first. And that Fulton project will still go on in the next project at a smaller scope. But for this project for 2024, this is because of a pipe that currently runs through properties between Souk Road and Cecil Blog, through backyards where the pipe's identified as being sort of at the end of that service life. So a conditional deficiency, and as well as a capacity deficiency from all the water of Triangle Mountain. So this project will be, instead of having this pipe going through these properties, it'll be a diversion of the storm main around the front of it, and then underneath VMP and connecting to our storm main and along VMP. And then, yeah, this is identified as part of our stormwater master plan. And as John said earlier, we have further projects identified as a part of our 5 and 30 and 100-year stormwater capital plan.
Even Tyler won't be around for the 100-year part of that. Next up is the Allendale Colwood Creek assessment. We're currently working on that, and I actually should have done a little more work on that this year, and I just didn't get the time to get into that. So I've done the smart thing and pass it on to Tyler. So Tyler's going to be our lead on this project moving forward. And we'll take a look at that assessment. We're really looking at what we need to do to retain our water. We've got capacity issues with regards to storm pipes in the Souk VMP corridor. Long-term residents and certainly council members that have been around know that there's some flooding areas in Colwood Creek, and we've had some issues. So this project will help us identify what those projects are. Once we identify those projects, it should lead to staff coming back to council with regards to recommendation for a area-specific DCC for stormwater. And we'll work with developers and landowners in that Allendale area, Galloway area, to take care of that Triangle Mountain water and then all the water in that new area. So we should be able to start a path down a program. This funding will create that path in 2024.
I'm going to give you an update on the Perenda Lane slope stability and drainage. So this year staff were able to engage a new consultant on this issue. We had a previous consultant that wasn't able to basically continue the work for us for various reasons. The new consultant has been engaged. They've done their own investigations and they've reviewed the historical information. We've been given a report, reviewed that report, and we're moving into detailed design for a solution. They've also recommended a few different strategies based on what we find when we get onto the slope for a temporary solution. And as of today, we've engaged a consultant contractor to work with us to get that temporary solution executed. We're hopeful that will happen in the first quarter of this year. The other new development I guess in 2023 was the Colwood Waterfront Stewardship Plan that runs right through this area of Colwood. So our hope now is to be able to piggyback off of that project and really design the solution for this slope stability in Perenda to be incorporated inside of the walkway design. So we're hoping to have the design from this new consultant come through, and that influence the design for the waterfront walkway. So that will be, the temporary solution is intended to be that patch that will get us through. So it conveys the water. There's no more infiltration into the top or crest of the slope. It's now conveying down. So our big worry of larger failures in the future, at least temporarily, will be addressed. And then that should give us the time then to work with the Colwood Waterfront Stewardship Plan and get the good, permanent, and proper solution addressed there. I think that concludes. Section.
If there's no further questions, that concludes the presentation on the drainage infrastructure budget, and we'll now move into the city's equipment 5-year plan. The equipment 5-year plan has been slightly restructured, so we summarize the recurring equipment programs, recurring upgrades or replacement programs. We've then summarized the replacement or renewal of existing equipment within the city's inventory, and then summarized new equipment. The majority of the new equipment has been previously approved under previous financial plans, but with that, we'll get into the review here. We maintain annual funding to ensure that we can fund the necessary replacement of our self-contained breathing apparatus for our fire rescue team. Similarly, the turnout gear program for the fire rescue team requires that we are funding this program annually. Mentioned a little at the onset of the evening in terms of reserve balances. There are a number of reserves where it is predictable, where we know that we will rely on this funding and we will require it annually. And so we ensure that we are transferring a portion of our taxation annually to support such programs. If there are no questions, we'll move along. IT equipment, network hardware. Similarly, we have life cycles on IT equipment, network hardware, anywhere from 3, 4, 5 years. And so we ensure that we set aside the funding annually, and then our IT team provides the necessary renewal. Last year's financial plan introduced a zero emission equipment conversion budget. The 2024 does have $17,500 set aside. We do intend to replace up to 5 self-propelled mowers currently powered by gas. Much of the remaining equipment program budgets are overseen by our public works team, so I will turn it over to them at this point.
Thank you, Council. So through this year, we were able to replace a lot of our line trimmers and hedge trimmers. And so the intent for this year is to move more into mowers and try and transition as much of that as possible. We've actually got a spectacular charging wall now for all our trimmers, and the parks team uses it daily, and they've been great at putting that equipment to use. For 2024, we also have replacement of a meshes board trailer. These are critical for us, whether it was today when we had to close the bridge of the lagoon or for branch drop off at city events. That's an important part of communicating with the public.
Previous financial plan did approve an $80,000 budget to support upgrade of our website, last upgraded in 2013. We have procured the vendor that will do the upgrade, and that work is underway, and that is being led by our communications manager, Sandra.
Things have sure gone up, eh, Sandra? Cost of these things, 80 grand now? Wow. I just have another quick question, just going back a couple slides. Don't have to go back there. It's just that, you know, in these things where we're going green now, you know, going with these electric mowers and things like this, is it permissible to use gas tax for that type of thing? Is that another funding source? Just out of interest.
I believe so.
Okay.
I shouldn't speak of, but I believe so.
Just asking.
And then looking ahead, so
Council Ward, sorry.
Sorry, I had a question actually for Sandra. Just on the website, because I think that is it's an area of interest, I think, for a lot of people. We often hear, and I think it's unsubstantiated, but a lot of people say it's hard to get feedback or be heard and things like that. With this new design, are we integrating platforms like Let's Talk Colwood? Does that merge into like a one-stop shop kind of thing, or will there be still separate kind of platforms?
The plan is not to integrate the two because they're really different platforms, as you say, but to better, to make it more available right on the homepage and to integrate it into each page where feedback is there's an opportunity for feedback. So we hope to integrate it in that way. It's not merged that you'll comment directly on a web page. But yes, that better integration with community feedback is a key goal.
Yeah, so like, I guess the user interface is more of a primary focus than maybe historically the way the platform's been built, I'm guessing, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Some of
Yeah.
our key drivers are search function so that you
Yeah.
can, the search function will be front and center and it will be more effective so you can find what you need. Of course, reworking the navigation so that it's more intuitive to people. Those are the main goals. Right now in the project, we are working to schedule user testing with members of the community so that we'll really get that feedback to inform the design in helpful ways.
That's great. Thank you.
So will that also just on that right now, will that also have the ability, you be able to do e-commerce on our website then in the future?
The Tempest project, this business process software, will integrate into our website. So you'll be able to go to city services, or we haven't quite got the name for it down yet, but there will be a portal on the website where people can pay their taxes, pay fees,
That's absolutely
find
great.
more development information.
Music to my ears.
That's the, yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. Just perfect.
And then looking ahead to 2025, we have a backhoe replacement on the horizon, Unit 61. That's something that we're planning for and looking for what kind of zero emissions options we'll be able to see for that sort of equipment. But for now, it's just a placeholder budget there as we investigate further. And then in 2025 as well, we've got replacement of one of our mower snow blowers. These are a critical piece of equipment in the summertime for our parks crew, whether it's cutting grass or in the wintertime clearing sidewalks. For 2026, looking ahead for our 2014 Bobcat skid steer, another critical piece of equipment for paving or any of that. It has basically 6 or 7 different attachments, so we can shoulder roads, we can pave, we can grind, we can load equipment with it. So very versatile piece of equipment. Again, in 2026, looking at replacing our Whacker diesel plate tamper. Diesel in this case will most likely refer more to its weight capacity. Traditionally, the diesel plate tamper has been the heavier piece of equipment with a greater degree of compaction. So we'll be looking at that for 2026. And then,
yeah, just continuing on with our zero emission goals. Parks has taken a good lead on getting equipment in and small tools for electrification. They're not as prevalent on the roads side, but they are starting. So compaction equipment is something that we can focus on to integrate it into our service areas as well. And that's something that we can use not only on the road side, but on the utility side.
And then also 2024 budget for our fleet telematics implementation. This is something that we started in 2023 that we're wrapping up in the new year here. So, and just to find a little bit of extra funding requested to finish tying in our existing fuel island, just to make sure we can have that reporting capability. It's a key thing for our provincial climate reporting, to be able to describe fuel consumption by vehicle. And this has already been a huge success for us, just being able to track whether it's vehicle functions, vehicle maintenance, pre-trip inspections, snow and ice reporting. We can tell, when the brine system is turned on in a vehicle, we know what percentage of the city is complete. So it's this huge reporting capability for us. So this has been hugely successful. And then looking at a new request for 2024 initial snow tractor, also a mower. It's that the sidewalk machine we talked about earlier, something that's invaluable during the summertime, but also in the wintertime. As we get more and more sidewalks, we find these are indispensable to keep those bike lanes and sidewalks clear. And then also you'll see a request here for tools, sewer pump station maintenance, a lot of hand tools, fleet maintenance, but primarily tied to work on pumps. When we pull a pump out of the station, we want to have tools ready at hand that we can use to maintain it, so we can reduce downtime.
Yeah, and this one may be something not everyone's too familiar with. This is really to highlight our focus on safety. We take it very seriously at Public Works, and we do really trying to look after our employees. And this is in this particular piece of equipment, sort of takes on two functions for us. Not only road safety and worker safety, but it also helps us with minimum crew sizing, as with these two pieces of equipment, one trained TCP, traffic control person, can run two devices. So we can help get workers off the roadway, but also free up one body to inject them back into our crew. So those are the two big ones for us. Happy to answer any questions on these if you're not too sure what they are. Yeah, so basically they're mechanized traffic control persons. There's different variations, but the pieces that we're requesting here specifically one person can maintain a neutral position in the site and control automated traffic arms that would replace the stop slow sign. You're starting to see them around the CRD on different projects, View Royal, Victoria. So the technology is there. It would just be something that we would be adding to the fleet for safety and
Good, we'll get you.
okay.
Also included within our equipment budget is that budget for city software. You'll recall 2023, one of our priorities was to procure asset management software. That did occur. This budget was previously approved to support that. The implementation, however, will occur in 2024 under the leadership of our GIS manager. Pleased to answer any questions you may have on this software implementation.
Okay, I can add a few points here. The big advantage of this software is that it's going to bring a record of all our assets into one central spot. So we'll be able to track through maps, tables, reports, the costing, replacement cycles, condition inspections, and we'll also have some mobile capability there for the crews out in the field.
Sounds impressive.
I also want to say a huge shout out to Brian for our telematics implementation. We could not have done it without his work, putting all the mapping together and that sort of thing. So we are forever indebted to Brian for that excellent work. Moving on to vehicle column lists. This is something that was previously approved in the financial plan that we were actioning earlier this year. And basically, they're mobile column lifts that allow us to lift vehicles up in excess of 60,000 pounds. So it can work on a fire truck, it can work on a lot of our trucks. Basically, they move around. You can lift the vehicle wherever is convenient. So we can use it at the end of the season to lift the vehicle up and get the salt off from underneath and treat it that way. We can also use it for routine maintenance as well. So that's a big thing for us to be able to improve our fleet and maintain it.
The line driver attachment, when we purchased last year our line striper, electric line striper, we purchased with the intent and opportunity to add on a piece such as this. What this will allow us to do is to continue to grow our painting program. We're limited with the scope that we can do with walk behind striping at this point. Adding this piece of equipment would allow us to expand into bigger projects, longer lining. A good example is after the repave at the end of Wishart. That was a little out of our scope with a walk behind, so we had that work contracted. With this piece of equipment, we could have serviced that in-house. So that's the intent. It connects to our electric line driver. It itself is electric, so it's continuing on with our zero emissions painting program.
Sounds like it has an ROI of less than a year then basically, right? Use it for the for the year, and it sounds like you get a return on investment. If you're having that contracted up before, not sure. but
Maybe
don't
not
get
in
to
the
see
first
that.
year, but yeah.
I'm assuming that there's an ROI that's always done on these new purchases.
Yeah, eventually, for a scope of the project that size that I just commented on Wishart, that would probably pay for itself in maybe 3 or 4 applications.
Yeah, okay. That's what I mean. Yeah. Makes sense. Let's proceed, please. Thank you. That's great.
Updated draft financial plan retains the remaining funding related to the municipal business process software implementation, the Tempest implementation. You heard Sandra comment on it briefly. The remaining works primarily relate to web services. Our team is also finalizing the integration of the phase of the software implementation that occurred in 2023. And so that will continue into 2024. The funding for this is primarily grant funded. It's not through a reserve fund. And so those works will continue. If there's no questions, in addition, we are proposing a new budget of $75,000 to support new budget software. The tool that we've been using for approximately 6 or 7 budget cycles now. We have certainly outgrown it. It is challenging to say the least. And so this budget is proposed for 2025. We intend to do some work to scope and seek out what our options are. But our team is very keen to get moving on this improvement to support a lot of the work that you hear from us through service review. In behind these slides is it's a heck of a lot of spreadsheets. It's a heck of a lot of integration of various financial tools. And so we believe that there certainly is an opportunity to refine some of those tools. Do you have a question?
Councilor Ward.
Just gonna say, I've got an old copy of like QuickBooks and simply acknowledging I guess that's really not gonna help all that much.
I was gonna say, well, I have these little subroutines for Excel wells. I see all those Excel spreadsheets. Okay, let's move on, please.
The previously approved piece of equipment, the utility tool cabinet for our utility crew, taking an existing pickup truck and diversifying a little further. This has been procured and will be delivered Q1 2024. So there's a carry forward to that amount. Parks equipment trailer. This supports that sidewalk snow blower and mower that we talked about earlier. Basically allowing our parks crew to transport it around the city easily.
That
I have another comment. Sorry about that. So yeah, on all the previous approved ones, there's no issue in my own head. So one of the questions I do have is, you know, some of these things are new to us right now. So I'm going to make an assumption and just tell me if it's a bad assumption. Do you have a sort of a criteria that has to have a certain return on investment, 3 years, 5 years? I'm assuming that's being screened before it comes to us.
Great question. It certainly depends on what the budget request is. Much of what you have just heard in terms of our equipment proposed spend is in accordance with our fleet and equipment replacement policy. So we do look at the useful life, that sort of
The
thing.
replacements, again, is not
Yeah.
an issue. It's the new equipment that I'm talking, like new. It's not replacing something.
So in terms of brand new requests that come forward,
Yes.
often are driven by the need of the community. So the expansion of sidewalks, the expansion of parks, the expansion of our team, for example, as we get into the fleet. So it's not necessarily that we're looking at the return on investment, but we're looking at what is the existing inventory and how does it support our service delivery. And at some point there is a tip where we require, for an example, an additional pickup truck to support a growing team, to support the growth.
That makes sense. Thank you.
How are we doing? We are through the equipment presentation. We have approximately 30 budgets remaining to present, fleet, parks, sewer infrastructure.
Okay, I'm going to call it just a 5-minute recess here. And,
Certainly.
Yes. I look after you. Just a 5-minute recess here. Thank you. See,
It's okay. Now I better go.
Okay, we shall resume. Are we ready to go, Marcy? You say when. Okay, thanks a lot. Over
Thank
to
you very
Jenn.
much. So with that, is similar with the structure of the equipment 5-year budget overview, fleet is set up similarly. So we'll start with a presentation on the fleet renewal and or refurbishment, moving into the proposed replacement budgets, and then lastly summarizing with new fleet inventory items. First up, fire rescue extraction equipment. Turn it over to our fire chief.
Thank you. So yeah, this is, as stated earlier in service review, this is part 2 of our extrication equipment going into our frontline engine to expand its capabilities for rescue extrication requirements. This will allow us to give us a bit more flexibility when on the road, but also look at how we redesign some of our existing fleet as we move forward.
Moving on, we've got a request for a brine water tank. This would be for a pickup truck, basically twofold. Throughout the summertime, we can use it for watering boulevards. We can put it in a smaller vehicle than we currently have. And in the wintertime, we can use it for brine, especially for bike lanes, bus stops, that sort of thing. It's also got a detachable wand, so it's useful for wandering, but we can actually use that to de-ice a bus stop. So it's super handy. Moving on. Truck number 62 asset life extension. So as part of the electrification plan, we're looking at where there aren't current electric options for vehicles. We're looking at how can we extend the life of what we have when we do have a vehicle that still has a lot of life left. So for example, truck 62 is a medium duty diesel truck. It only has 100,000 K on it, which is honestly very young in its life. So we were having some work done on it. And a contractor, we were just talking with him to see his assessment of it, and he said basically it's a new truck. It's in such good shape. So this is something we want to keep going. There's no point in getting rid of it. We wouldn't get the money for it basically that we would need because you know, it's better to just keep it. So part of what we want to do, it's our shop truck right now. And in terms of shop functionality, it doesn't have as much sewer capability as we'd like. So it would be better off served as just a basic dump truck, plow truck. It will be a plow truck that anyone could jump in. It's that basic truck that no matter what class of driver's license you have, you can use it. So this would further expand our capability and build our redundancy through a snow fight. Similar story for truck 63, similar age of truck. This one has less kilometers actually, only 84,000 K, but it's seen a lot more salt because it has been a plow truck for its life. So this will basically be to kind of rejuvenate the truck, get rid of some of that salt damage and refresh it so that it can be used going forward. Truck 66, moving on, is a 5-ton. Similar situation, really just the box has seen a lot of salt over the years. So just some rust there we need to take care of. But other than that, perfectly good truck, only has 63,000 K on it. For a truck of its age, it could easily have 200,000 to 300,000 in the private sector. So tons of life left there. We might as well keep it. Truck 80, this is our brine truck, and with our previous brine truck too, we had this issue. The brine eats away at the vehicles because it penetrates so much more than the salt. So what we find is a lot of the brake pots on the air brake system, these things get chewed up by the salt. And so these things we need to replace. We want to look at things like basically treating the underbody, removing any salt residue, coating that, and keeping that going. So it's a relatively new truck, but it has some salt damage. So 2017, it's only got 37,000 K on it. Moving on, in 2020, when we looked at the fleet policy, one of the big things that we realized is that later in life, keeping a pickup truck for 10 years, tire replacements do come up. It's a critical thing to get it that extra few years. So this is just an opportunity for us to refresh the fleet tires without overly impacting the operating budget. It also helps us get into some snow tires too for some of our winter equipment. We're finding that having the 2 sets of tires is a much better way to go, especially for those medium duty trucks like the truck 62 and 63. So that's definitely a direction we want to go in, and this would enable us to do that. Next one is for our fire department here.
All right, so The fire mobile data units are MDTs within the trucks, and just based on the aging infrastructure, we've been trying to replace them one every year. We've been now looking at the longevity of the program. We're going to have to look to this as a continuing program. We're going to continue to replace them as they age out, just to keep up with technology.
Next one is for a replacement of our dump truck, truck 53. So truck 53 is a 2009 truck. It's a great vehicle, but it's seen a lot of service and salt, and it's starting to show some wear. In addition, it's also not one of our operator friendly trucks in the sense that it has a double clutch heat and fuller transmission. So, well, you know, I like it myself for going down a hill in the snow. It's something that everybody can drive. And so by taking truck 62 and turning it into a snow truck, we can actually get far more use out of the vehicle. So as much as it's sad to see truck 53 go, it's a necessary thing. So our hope is to use that funding to build a new shop truck, one that could be zero emission too. So this is something we're going to look for through this process. So this would allow us to lift sewer pumps too, because it's not just a dedicated service truck for vehicles, it's also for sewers. So it would have a crane on it. We could lift pumps, repair them. We could maintain vehicles in the field. We could use the mobile column lifts in conjunction with it. It's really a hugely versatile vehicle. It could do welding, and it could potentially do all of this zero emissions. So this is a big push for us to try and see how we can integrate a vehicle of this sort into our fleet. And then truck 71 replacement. This is just a standard pickup that was previously approved. It's going to be replaced with an F-150 Lightning that's been ordered coming Q1 2024. And then just a few, looking ahead to some pickup truck replacements. Truck 73, a lot of these are really easy zero emission swaps because we're seeing vehicles like that come online. So that'll be an easy one for next year. And then on to the part of
And to continue the replacements, Italian 5.5 replacement, we're looking to replace this aging Tahoe with a Lightning to go with the zero emissions and maintain those goals, and that'll be the first for our fleet.
And then looking ahead to 2026, we've got another pickup truck, truck 79, just a basic parked pickup truck used for garbage collection. Again, in 2026, Roads Crew Bus, truck number 74. It's a 1-ton truck. We're going to look at integrating a zero emissions option for this one as well. This would be basically somewhat equivalent to the truck we purchased earlier this year. It doesn't need to have snow capability necessarily. It's more just a day-to-day maintenance truck. 2027, we'd be looking at replacing another crew cab pickup for the parks crew, unit 88. And then 2028, this would be a really good one that we'd like to see go zero emissions. It's unit 77, our garbage truck. Now, part of the garbage run, of course, involves getting out, getting to the cans, that sort of thing. So something that we can, you know, leave running with its lights on when it's parked at a bus stop that's not generating diesel exhaust would be fantastic. So this is something that we're very excited to integrate. We're not seeing necessarily a lot of options in this category right now for 1-ton. So having it in 2028 makes sense. You know, we'll probably see an option by then quite easily. And then moving on to the next one, EV charging facilities. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I just see a question there.
I just had a question about the fire trucks, and I'm just wondering, in terms of, this isn't directly related to the budget here, but like in terms of the population growing and that sort of thing, if we needed more fire trucks, is the station have room for another bay and another truck? And are we putting money into like a reserve to be able to purchase an additional, if we needed one eventually, an additional truck?
Great question. I'll jump in first. So we are annually setting aside sustainable funding for the city's fire reserve. I'll provide detail on that next week. But in terms of the physical space, I'll turn that over to our fire chief to comment.
Yeah, looking forward, that's something we're going to look at, and I'm hoping that's something that I can bring forward in better light when in the strategic plan as we move forward, that I'm hoping to have forward in front of you in Q3.
Okay, thanks.
And for EV charging, this is a kind of a combo one between fire and public works. So we're currently finishing up some EV charging installs at public works. We're just basically have a carry forward to facilitate the hydro connection for that and any last remaining tidy up works. And then we also need to replace one of the ones out front here at City Hall, which is going to be critical for us to monetize those. And you'll see a report coming in February, that as well. And then also Fire Hall.
Okay, so looking into 2026, Rescue 56, this is one of our larger apparatus. This is a vehicle that I've spoken about previously. We are going to be looking at what we can do to redesign this apparatus and determine if we need to replace it in its existing capacity, or can we look to develop a new concept. So I'm hoping by the end of 2024, we'll have we'll determine a plan and move forward with that.
Also features a request for a general duty van. This would be something we would share between Public Works and City Hall. Would just be a useful thing, whether it's the engineering team going out to take measurements or take some tools with them, or whether it's our team transporting something for an event or otherwise. It's nice to have an interior space to be able to transport items. Most of our vehicles right now are pickup trucks, so this will be very beneficial for us to take valuable items or tools, that sort of thing. You'll also see a new request this year in 2024 for a zero emission flat deck truck. This is something we've realized is a critical part of our fleet, especially in service of sewer infrastructure. For a sewer connection, for example, it's something that we could haul shoring with. It's something that we could, load a pump onto the back of. It's just a very versatile equipment for us, and it would get mounted with a lift gate too. So just allowing it to carry and transport even more. And then a carry forward budget for 3 F-150 Lightning trucks that were ordered last year. They are imminent, should be here in the next 2 weeks. And then looking ahead to 2026, replacement of van number 81. This is it's a small van. When we replace it, we'd likely move up to a full-size van like we're requesting for the zero emissions. It's useful for running around for supervisors, that sort of thing now, but we'd like to see it expanded further in terms of its capacity.
That concludes the presentation on the city's fleet budgets.
I do have a question. I don't know if this is the place to do this or if it's even a capital expense. And this is, we talked about this a few meetings ago, and this has related to putting meters on the electric charge stations. Is that a capital expense, and where is it?
Through the chair, thank you for that question. So that is a report that I'm working on right now. It's actually very straightforward to monetize the stations. We can do it through our existing flow portal. We simply set the rate, and if it's a graduated format, the rate, say, after 4 hours. So it's something that I've been doing a lot of research on. There'll be a report in February requesting direction.
Gotcha. Thank you. So it's more of a software thing then, I guess. That's how we see this.
Exactly. The units, except for the one that we're asking to replace out front of City Hall, that's not a flow one, but all the other ones are ready to go and could be transitioned right away.
Thanks a lot.
And we will require a bylaw amendment to charge the fees.
Yes.
And so with that, we'll move into the city's parks infrastructure 5-year capital plan. Wanted to preface the introduction of this capital plan with the proposal for a permanent capital infrastructure staffing function in this area. The 2021 financial plan introduced a dedicated capital infrastructure staffing member within our engineering team to support infrastructure works, primarily road infrastructure works. At that time, we did propose an additional staffing function be introduced in 2024. This draft financial plan has been refined to propose that that function would explicitly support the city's parks infrastructure program, would serve as a project manager to oversee the implementation of a number of parks initiatives that both this plan proposes, but also supporting Parks and Rec Master Plan, individual parks management plans, additional capital works that aren't yet integrated into this capital plan, but would be coming. Specifically, this plan is proposing that we would utilize the Capital Reserve Fund to support this staffing in year one, and we would then move to tax funded to ensure that we have sustainable funding moving into the future for this function. First time this council has heard about this, please to answer any questions you may have.
I'm just learning something. I didn't think you were allowed to even do this. But you should know. Just, wow, yeah. Yeah, just.
Referencing the funding source or?
Well, to use capital money or to fund a person. I thought I read it wrong actually, so I just want to make sure I am clear that this is actually funding a live body, a person, right?
Yes, and so we currently have this in place. And so to be clear, the staffing is funded through taxation. And we annually fund that we transfer that taxation into our capital budget, and in turn, it funds both staffing and the infrastructure spend. Staffing is funded through taxation.
Yeah, no, I understood that. Yeah, so it's just not sitting right in my head. Sorry. Councillor Jordison.
I realize we're looking at capital expenditures, but just because there's a staffing component in here, what is the amount of staffing within the Parks Department? Do we have like an FTE count?
No, I don't think you do.
Yes, we do. It was published with the service review profiles. I should know the number off the top of my head, but I don't, but we can certainly retrieve it.
What about roads staff? I guess just because this has been brought up, what I've noticed is that there seems to be a lot more park staff than road staff. And I'm not sure that makes sense to me. That's all. Putting it out there.
Sorry, not to specifically answer that question, I guess, and next week when we return with the operating budgets, we will bring back those two specific answers for you, and then talk more broadly about why the size of the teams are what they are. The reason you're seeing this particular ask as part of our capital budget is we've discovered that given the operational priorities of the parks team, we haven't been able to functionally move forward with capital projects that council desires. And so if we're going to do that work, we could fully contract it out. And through those contracts, 100% of that would be capitalized. Or we could do what's recommended here is we bring a team member in. We capitalize that cost because they're fundamentally delivering capital projects. But it's our belief that we're not able to deliver the capital program in parks that you desire without additional resources focused on project delivery. And so that's why this is here this evening.
Okay. Yeah, I'll accept it, I guess. Any other comments from council on this? Councilor Ward?
Yeah, I think I just, as you said, first time we've seen it, so it takes a minute to digest kind of what we're what we're doing here. Because I think for me, my perception of maintaining service levels, I have to get my head around the fact, okay, you know, that can mean increasing. You maintain a certain standard, but you're broadening across, you know, a larger community. I mean, for lack of a better explanation. But yeah, just this particular insertion in here kind of, yeah, some doesn't sit perfectly, but you know, for the moment, let's not let us.
We'll accept your professionalism. How's that sound, Mr. Earl?
I mean, certainly what we're hearing this evening is we could circle back and bring this as part of the operating budget, an amendment there too. I think it ended up here because as we're delivering capital, we came to the realization we're not delivering what you expect.
Okay.
And we're attempting to do that side of desk or from the side of a number of desks. And that's not achieving, in our estimation, your expectations.
Okay, fair. I will accept your professional judgment on this one. Okay, let's move on then.
Thank you. Previously approved capital infrastructure budgets include approximately 1.5 FTE equivalents. This would move that to 2 in this year, to 2.5 in next year. But with that introduction, we'll move into what is proposed for the infrastructure improvements in the area of parks, and I'll turn it over to our parks manager.
So in 2023, we were concentrating on Colwood Creek Park and the Colwood Creek Park Management Plan recommendations, short-term recommendations for design, costing and design for the playgrounds, a new splash pad to enhance the existing splash pad at Colwood Creek, washrooms, we have a environmental assessment done, just finished of the actual creek through that section of Colwood Creek with recommendations on ecosystem restoration and creek improvements and restoration, and currently in progress a tree inventory and management plan as well. So we have been working with several different designers, park designers, park vendors, washroom designers, washroom vendors, where, you know, the challenge for Colwood Creek, Ocean View, and Lookout Lake washrooms is there's no sewer. So it's coming up with a washroom facility that works in all three of those. And we're looking at vault toilets, which is challenging because we want to have real functional washrooms, and we're able to do that. We found a few vendors that were able to do that. So now we'll be moving towards a Colwood specific design for a washroom, and that's what we've been working on for Colwood Creek. Lookout Lake, the same. Just we're working on the washroom design and costing, and looking at the short-term improvements for Lookout Lake as well as Ocean View Park washrooms.
Okay, so the waterfront stewardship plan, as we were here in December, we engaged Associated Engineering as the consultant for project management and design services for the project. So for 2024, we'll be working with Associated Engineering to do project initiation, which includes environmental and geotechnical investigations and reports, and 2 different phases of public consultation, which includes engagement with the nation's Esquimalt Songhees, and as well workshops as part of our functional design and engagement. Any questions on waterfront stewardship?
Lastly, the Parks Infrastructure does propose a $10,000 budget. I should say propose, it was previously approved just to support the ongoing implementation and improvement of signage within city parks. That concludes the overview of the Parks Infrastructure 5-year capital plan. Last up, we have the plan pertaining to the city's sewer infrastructure.
Council Ward, sorry about that.
Sorry, just going back to parks, nothing specific on there, but looking ahead, I didn't see any reference to new parks, and I'm thinking Quarry Park specifically. I know DCC funding is a large part of that, but like, is there does it not factor in here for some reason? I'm just curious because looking at the timelines and some of the other pieces, I would think that that would be, you know, a significant outlay for us.
Back to my previous comments, I think what we've discovered in the area of parks capital delivery is that we're not meeting your expectations. We haven't dedicated enough resources specifically to new capital and to forecasting new capital. As council's aware, we have engaged Land Art Consulting, who are actively working on the Quarry Park plan. We expect that plan to contain a number of projects that council would like to execute that will need to get populated into 5-year plans like this one. And so we're seeking dedicated project support to help us get there. We expect, as described in the roads program, that years 3, 4, and 5 of the roads program are probably going to look different a year from now, as greater clarity through the TMP allows projects to be scoped and budgeted. We expect very much the same in parks. We expect park spending as funded through DCC and other grants to see populated in years 25, 26, and 27. But we need more project focus to get there.
Yeah, appreciate that. Absolutely fair. Just getting a little ahead of things, but I just really like parks.
Okay, so new ask this year. When our SCADA system was implemented, the $20,000 to $25,000 mark is a suggested amount from the engineering consultant who helped implement the program. Many of our SCADA components in our system are nearing the end of their service life. Some of them have not been replaced since inception in the station. So this would just be looking forward to, starting to proactively replace those components with the help of the engineering consultant before we have any significant failures in the stations. As the SCADA system is the mechanical eyes and ears of our system, is very important that it's in top tier shape. So that's what this ask refers to. So happy to answer any questions on that.
Yeah, excuse my total ignorance on this. What is SCADA components? What the heck is it?
So the SCADA, it is what monitors our station remotely when we're not physically monitoring it. So that is the interface that will show us the levels of the pumps, pump stops and starts when there's any information. It's basically giving us all the information that we need from every station that we have from a desktop or a laptop computer. So if we have a pump failure, that will alarm to SCADA, which will go to our standby supervisor to alarm us that there is an issue at the station. Anything that goes down. So anything SCADA component related is electrical equipment that helps that system run.
Thank you very much. I just added to my vocabulary. Oh, sorry, Councilor Grove.
Thanks. I just noticed here a sanitary overflow situation now. This is caused by an equipment failure typically.
Yeah, so the SCADA ask and the pump replacement program really go hand in hand. The pumps are run by SCADA, so if there is a failure in a pump, it will alarm to SCADA. Without SCADA, if that pump shut off or there was a power failure, we didn't know about it. Eventually that wet well would fill and we would fill and spill essentially.
Yeah.
So that's what SCADA would alarm us to when that pump would fail.
To hopefully prevent the overflow that of course you don't want.
Yeah.
This is probably dating me a bit, but I know that at some time the sanitary sewer and the storm sewers in some cities were joined. So in a heavy rain event like we get, it would be overwhelmed and you'd have this kind of overflow issue, right? We don't have that set up though, right? We're separate.
Luckily, yes, our SCADA system, our sewer system is all separate. So fortunately, we don't have the combined system that really pushes, like, you know,
There's no
say something that we had today with that significant amount of rain. definitely has the capacity.
Yeah, I assumed that, but I just wanted to hear, make sure. Yeah, great, cool. Thank you very much.
And this is the pump replacement program. So this is existing program. As we go through the budget, this is slated as a 10-year replacement plan. But with everything else, we're seeing rising costs in at least a 3 to 4% increase on pumps each year. So we've stopped it at, so there is no confusion. This program does not drop off after 2026. We're just going to reevaluate just to ensure that we have the right figures after this year, to make sure that that 130,000 plus the 20,000 for the SCADA equipment will be added to 2027. But once that continues on, we'll get a better idea of what we're actually looking at for costing in the next couple of years. And again, this is just a proactive program to help ensure that we do not run into any critical failures prior to.
Over to you, Jen.
That concludes the team's presentation of the 5-year capital plan. We're next scheduled to return to chambers this Thursday evening, where we will jump into our special initiative review, and you'll hear from each of our service areas for initiatives, activity that's occurring outside of routine operations. So we'll pick up then.
Super. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, team, for the great presentations. And on that note, motion to adjourn. Okay, thank you. Councilor Grove, Councilor Jordison. All in favor? No opposed. Okay, motion carried. Thanks very much.